Hello, spiritual explorers and lightworkers. Welcome to Megan's Mystical Mashup, a spiritual conversation with me and a guest about life, the universe, and anything in between. I'm Megan Rounds, spiritual connector, healer, energist, and founder of Mystical Mashup. Welcome to today's show. Our guest today has been a member of the Lightworkers Lab for just under a year and a half and spends much of her time here in the main lab, as well as in the lab light room, where she hosts her weekly program, Mediumship Readings with Vanessa Holmes, every Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific Time. She is also an active student of the Lightworkers Lab 2020 Intuitive Intensive, so she also spends a lot of her time immersed in that as well. Her main psychic modality is clairvoyance, with clairaudience and clairsentience as secondaries, and she lives a couple of hours south of Portland, Oregon, in a household of 9, which includes her husband and their 3 children, as well as her best friend, her 2 kids, and her sister. Her best friend's 2 kids and her sister. In their case, the phrase, "it takes a village," definitely holds true. A fan of underground music who loves playing video games with her kids, she uses any additional attention she can to squeeze out of her that she can squeeze out of her days with building her spiritual business. Please give a warm Lightworkers welcome to Vanessa Holmes. Oh, hi, Vanessa.
Hi.
Oh my.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you so much for spending your Saturday morning with us today. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Okay.
Because she has a household of 9, Vanessa has chosen to be the first guest ever in the mashup to conduct our conversation from her car.
Just I have to hide in here.
Yeah, but so hopefully that will actually add to the nice ambiance of today, and you've got an outdoor vibe in a sense because at least your car is outdoors, and so yeah. So what'd you think of that card? I heard you laughing or saw you laughing.
Oh my gosh, it was so great. I thought it was so perfect.
So those of you watching will find out why in a minute. But so Vanessa, I always like to start with a really big, it's not even a question, it's more like a request to share with us your spiritual journey. And if you can add into that how you found your way into the Lightworkers Lab, that'd be awesome too.
You got it. Okay. So let's see. The beginning of last year, so January 2019, I was feeling like really unfulfilled in my career. I had been doing peer romance. I was a peer romance consultant for 9 years, and even though it was super successful, I felt like I was only helping people on a surface level and not like profound enough. So I decided to hop on Facebook, and randomly, I was like, I'm going to look up groups that I'm interested in. And so I searched up like house plants and gardening and do-it-yourself home improvements, and then metaphysical groups. And and the Lightworkers Lab was one of them. And I ended up joining, and it was so amazing. And all the people in it were so great. The moderators were amazing. I really ended up building relationships with a lot of the moderators, and it was really cool. And I was like, actually, at the time, I wanted to do the 2019 Intuitive Intensive, but I clearly was not ready because all the mediumship intensive and the Akashic Records intensive just happened to fall in my lap. Like randomly, we got checks in the mail, and I was like, "Oh, I know what this is going to go towards." And so, so I ended up signing up for those classes, and I realized I did, in fact, have abilities, which was amazing. And I've just been awakening ever since.
Well, thank you. And, I love that, you decided you were dissatisfied with your earlier career and decided to just look and see what else is out there. And this kind of dropped in your lap, which is awesome. And oftentimes people just find the Lightworkers Lab because they're doing a search, or because, whether in Facebook or in YouTube. You took the Facebook route. A lot of people take the YouTube route and find Crystal Ann Compton's videos, which is kind of their introduction to the Lightworkers Lab. I love hearing about the different pathways to it, which is just fascinating to me. I'm really curious about the metaphysical aspect, that you knew you wanted to have some kind of, I mean, that was one of the things you had searched for. So how did that come about that you even thought to plug that in?
So our team had a team psychic, and
Wait, in your workplace, your team did? Like the team you
yeah,
led?
so yeah,
Oh, okay, cool.
we had a so every year we'd have this retreat, and one of the days our team psychic would come in, and she would give readings to every single person on our team who was there on the retreat. And uh and at the time I was very skeptical, but I loved it. Like, it was fun to me, and I just got really interested in it because the people around me talked a lot more in depth. And I come from, well, actually I grew up Mormon, but at the same time I have always been, I come from an academic background, and science has always been huge within my family. And people around me started talking about how um, this metaphysical stuff can relate to science, and I was starting to make connections that way. And Trisha Carr, I started listening to her podcast, and I was like, oh my gosh, this everything like makes so much sense. I love it.
So going back into the team piece with the team psychic, was that, it sounded like that wasn't necessarily someone you had chosen to bring in. Was that just a
No.
part of the overall model for, what was the name of the company again? I always
Pure romance.
yes, thank you. It's
Mhm.
like so funny to me that I keep forgetting that. I'm writing it down. But yeah, so pure romance, is that like the makeup of how, like when they say when you create a team, that one of the things they're going to want to do is invite a team psychic? Do they assign them? How does that work? I've never heard of that before. That's why I'm so fascinated by it.
That's great. No, actually, it was the idea of one of my team members. She thought it would be a really good idea, and I was like, yeah, let's do it. Sounds like fun. And
Was
so she knew somebody.
it was somebody that, okay, so then recommended. And so if you were skeptical at first, how did that work for you with your first experience with that?
Okay. This is a great story. So she did my reading, and it was amazing. And actually, like, throughout the rest of the year, everything that she brought through was very evidential, and it came to pass. But afterwards, she talked about she was a medium, and I had no idea people could you could talk to dead people. Like, I had that was so foreign to me. And at that time, my mother and my father, or no, just my mother. My father was still alive at that time, but my mother had passed, and she let me talk to my mom, and that was so healing to me. Even though I was kind of skeptical, it didn't matter because it was just so healing and amazing that actually mediumship has become one of my favorite things now because of it.
Well, that's so amazing, when you look at how things transpired. So was that early in the pure romance part of
Yes,
your stuff?
actually, it was about 3 years into the business. Hmm.
Wow. Okay. So it's like you had this person on your team who suggested this particular psychic who was able to do a reading for you. Is that the same person who then did the connection with you and your, okay, so, and then you were able
Hmm.
to talk to your mom, have this healing, and it really, was that where you'd say was like your awakening, or were there other things before then that really hinted at it that you just weren't aware of at the time?
That was probably my first awakening, because I hear other people talk about like multiple. So that was my first introduction to the metaphysical world. And then my second awakening was after my dad had passed. And this thing, so after he passed, we were coming home from the chaplain. I think it was the chaplain. We were driving home, and on this particular road, there's a lot of fields and fences on the highway. And there, I kid you not, there was a hawk on every other post. And I thought I was like dreaming or going crazy or something. I don't know. But then like a week later, I described it to my brother who was also in the car to me. And he's like, oh my God, I saw the same thing. And so I was like, oh my gosh, that was dad. That was him. Because hawks are his favorite bird.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Hmm.
I love those types of stories. I see hawks all the time myself. I see them on the poles. I see them flying. They sometimes fly in front of me. I mean, they're just all around wherever I happen to be. And I notice that other people in the car, or whatever I happen to be doing, don't notice them the same way I always have. And so I always think of it as a soul animal, I mean, and
Yeah.
it's just so I love that you are seeing hawks and you associate that with your dad. I don't have that sense that the hawk represents a person in my life who has passed. So I feel that is more applicable to me. And I love how animals can come in to our lives and represent these different things for us.
Yeah,
So
it's pretty amazing.
is your brother also somebody who has opened up to metaphysics, or is it a completely different kind of conversation, just that the two of you saw hawks?
So my brother, he I'm not sure, honestly. He is very skeptical. Um, he in our family, he's the one who has two degrees in mathematics and physics, and we always talk science together. It's great. Like
That's
even
really cool.
quantum physics. I love talking about quantum physics with him. And then anytime we kind of get like woo woo about it, he always like brings it back in. So that's why I'm not sure. But I have two other siblings who are pagan, and
Really? Oh, wow. That's an interesting nugget.
yes. So I actually around the time that I found the Lightworkers Lab, I ended up starting to go with them to their little pagan group, and I've been learning all kinds of cool stuff. And heck yeah.
Oh, wow, that is so fascinating. So I want to, I'm not sure exactly how to ask this question, but I want to go to, you mentioned being, brought up as a Mormon, and
Mhm.
how do you think that influenced your path forward, and maybe even your ability to be receptive to these new or more recent experiences in your life? Or how did they prepare you in some way, shape, or form, if they prepared you?
That's a great question. So growing up Mormon, actually, I had always, from even a really young age, was always questioning things. Whenever my parents divorced when I was one and remarried, and so anytime my dad came to pick me up for his weekend time, it was an hour drive, and I would have so many questions like, well, how come this happens? Like, well, why would God do this? Or how does this make sense? And like, we would just constantly, in fact, I'm pretty certain that it was my questions that got him to actually leave the church. So
Wow, that's pretty
yeah.
interesting.
So in about 1999, he left the church and we kind of followed. Hmm.
Did your mom, was she still a part of the church at that time?
So this is where things kind of get complicated. So, um, remember how we had the conversation about my mom being supportive of my business? So, well, at first she was not supportive at all. So that was my stepmom. My real
Oh,
mom
okay.
was the one who passed away. Um, okay, so uh, wait, what was the question?
Oh,
Did my mom leave the church? So no, my mom actually stayed in the church for quite some time afterwards. Um, and my real mom at the time was still involved with the church too.
okay. Wow. Um, and so then how did things transpire from you from there? You the things like you asked a lot of questions. Those questions may have prompted your dad to leave the church. The rest of you followed. What happened from there for you? Were you kind of, I'm trying to get to like the filler in between you're being raised in a Mormon environment to your awakening,
Okay.
first
Okay.
awakening.
So after we left the church, I kind of went on this like seeking path where I looked like for a stint I was Catholic, like I joined the Catholic church and did all the classes and everything. um I for a little bit I was Buddhist. So I went on these like journeys of like seeking out all these different religions. And finally, well, and then there was a time actually that I was torn between being agnostic and full blown atheist. And I kept going back and forth. Like a part of me is like, no, there's too many things like that, just too many things. And then I'd be like, no, it's just stuff that we haven't been able to discover yet. We haven't been able to scientifically discover. And so I'd go back to atheism, and then I'd go back to agnostic. And so there was a time frame like I was kept on going back and forth. And then after my dad had left the church, he became pagan, and that's why my little sister and my little brother are the ones who are pagan. But I was rebellious at that time, so I wanted nothing to do with it.
Wow. So that your dad turned pagan before your siblings. Well, that's so interesting in that he also left the Mormon Church and decided that this was another path to follow. What I'm hearing though from you is that I mean, and tell me if I have this accurate or not, that you're a person who likes to try things on to experience them to know if they're true for you.
Yes, definitely.
I can totally relate to that. I'm, when you were talking about the, very scientific family and really kind of, you didn't use this wording, but like finding ways that intersect between science and metaphysics and spirituality. Were there things that really lit up in your path and that led you to pursue Catholicism, Buddhism, atheism, all of those different things? Was it kind of like breadcrumbs that you followed, or how did you decide to go for one and then move
Let's
into
see.
the other?
Okay, so with Catholicism, I really liked the tradition aspect, and I really liked everybody having these rituals. I loved the rituals and the prayers and the community, and I loved the fact that everything was between you and God. It wasn't like this broadcasted thing. It was a relationship between you and God. Um, Whereas like in the Mormon church, there were things like testimony and sacrament, and it felt really broadcasted, if that makes sense.
Well, like
So I
it's a
really,
social thing, like it a part of to be a part of the community, you do these things.
yeah.
Is okay.
And um and don't get me wrong, like there are still things that in the Mormon church I think is good, like their sense of family. I think is amazing. But when I was pursuing the Catholic aspect, I really liked the traditions and how the relationship was very solo, just between you and spirit. And then when I left the Catholic Church and pursued Buddhism, um, I had finished a college course in Western culture or no, what was it? It was art. It was Western art, and we had to go through all of the history of art. And so it was really interesting to learn about like the Byzantine Empire and Romans and all that good stuff. And that's where I actually found Buddhism, and which was super cool. And I ended up taking a course online about Buddhism, and that felt really amazing too, because again it was this personal inner journey. I guess that's, yeah.
Which kind of sounds a bit like the theme, you know, that you appreciate the inner journey, um, and the ritual and traditions, but not so much the um, maybe dogma. Um,
Yeah, it's yes. And that's how I resonate with Crystal so much, is because she talks about she talks about God and stuff, and even though it was kind of a trigger word for me, she talked about it in a way that was amazing and didn't have anything to do with dogma or judgment or anything.
yeah, and I know a lot of people really connect with Crystal's Christian past as well because she's been there in a somewhat extreme environment and can really talk to other people who have had well, a heavy dose of that dogma and how
Hmm.
you can reconcile that with your own spiritual beliefs and practices and something that works for you. And that's the other thing that really stood out is that going piece by, or not piece by piece, but from religion to religion to religion and some non-religions, I heard really clearly take what fits and release what doesn't, which is something Crystal says all the time. And I
Hmm.
have adopted that because it's like
Hmm.
so important. It doesn't have to all fit, but the parts that
Hmm.
do, why can't you embrace those and adopt those for yourself?
Yes, yes, I agree completely.
So moving into the pagan aspects and what you are doing on your own in your own spiritual journey today, how what else have you embraced and picked up on that work for you?
Okay, so so paganism, I'm really enjoying that, and uh, the I really like the mediumship, and I found out that I'm fairly decent at the Akashic Records readings, and
I'll say I've had a reading and it was fabulous.
I guess, and I feel like it's just uh kind of a culmination of everything now, like you said, like just a little bit from each religion has created what I am now. And I don't even know.
Well, what are some of the things around paganism that that you really like that resonates so much with you? And then we'll go into something else around mediumship.
So the paganism, their identity with Earth and Gaia um and the moon and the oh, how do I explain this? I just really like how connected pagans are with nature and the elements.
That's something that also resonates with me in the way that they look at natural cycles in
Yes.
nature. And
Yes.
yeah, I just that's so powerful for me, and it really offers a different way to look at time and the passage of time, but also how we celebrate these different things that happen in nature. And as I've learned a lot from Stephanie Kathleen Carpenter or Stephanie C.
Yeah.
Wyman,
Yeah.
same person, different names, but that a lot of those things were then adopted by Christianity.
Yep.
And it's just fascinating to me how many of those things, all of the things that are practiced typically here in the United States and other Western cultures, really came from a pagan background.
hmm my husband is very Christian. He comes up in a Christian background, and I'm always like telling him, actually, this is this is a pagan tradition, and he's like, what? He's always giving me a hard time, and I'm always giving him a hard time. It's great.
Well, and the fact that that's a common background in a sense, you know, it's like that happened so long ago that, I mean, if we're looking from a linear time perspective, it's like that's a shared background in a sense for us and our perspectives and how they can intersect with people of different beliefs. And so and other religious beliefs have different but similar usages of cycles and time and
hmm
directions and the use of elements and things like that that I find really fascinating when they all weave together in a really similar way like that.
hmm
To me, that
hmm
adds validity to the message or to the concepts when so many different uh, cultures embrace very similar things. They may talk about
hmm
them differently, but the concepts are fundamentally, you know, similar or the same. I love that.
I love that too. Yes, yep, yep.
So with mediumship, I'm okay. So I'm going to take this in a slightly different direction, but um, you know, I know you took the mediumship intensive, you took the Akashic Records intensive. Both of those are offered here in the Lightworkers Lab, and it seems like those really help to validate your own abilities and strengthen your own abilities. Um, oh, go ahead.
Okay, so in the mediumship intensive, I was still a little bit skeptical, right? And I was like, what the heck? I'm embracing it. And so I did a practice with a partner. So we partnered up together, and I volunteered to go first, and I closed my eyes and I just started. So she asked me for a specific person, and I closed my eyes and I just started describing what I saw and what this person looked like. And she kept on saying, that sounds right. Yep, that's what she looks like. Yep, that's probably her. And then she's like, do you want to see a picture of her? And I was like, sure, that sounds great. Not thinking, like, kind of like getting ready to feel disappointment, you know? And she showed me a picture of her her person, and oh my gosh, it was exactly who I saw. And I was like mind blown.
Wow.
And then from that moment on, I have no doubts. I am like, that's it.
Yeah, that's
No
like
doubts. I cannot deny it. There's
that's
no denying.
the best validation ever, really. You know,
Yeah.
it's like you describe it, they say, yeah, it sounds like them, but then there's always that doubt until you see a picture. That's fabulous.
I was like,
Wow. Wow. Now I'm kind of blown away by that. That's really cool. So, how did you, you know, hearing a little bit about your husband and his Christian beliefs and things like that, how have you incorporated, well, how have you even approached this subject of mediumship within your family? Or have you approached the concept within your family? I mean, you may not have yet, and that's totally fine too. And if you don't want to talk a whole lot about it, that's okay too.
no, it's all good. So my husband, he believes in the spirit realm. He believes in this stuff. He does come from dogma, so his family kind of thinks it's like of the devil, but he's not so sure. And he supports me in anything and everything, and he sees that it makes me happy, and he sees that it makes me feel fulfilled. So he loves it, and we just kind of joke back and forth about things.
D- does your best friend, is she somebody who also shares these beliefs or is supportive of you in these
Oh
endeavors?
yeah, I do readings for her all the time.
Oh, that's super cool.
And then our kids, so we in the very beginning we want them to be exposed to as many religions as possible so they can make their own decisions on what they want to believe when they get older.
That's helpful. How do you do that? I mean, are they really young? I didn't mention their ages or things like that, but where are they age-wise and how are you incorporating those types of things?
So anytime, they go to church with uh, grandma, so Caleb's mom, and I'll talk to them about pagan stuff, and I'll take every once in a while I'll take them with me to like a pagan ritual or whatever, and then we talk about that there's all kinds of religions. We've discussed Buddhism before. We do. Okay, so one of the Mormon things that oh, and I talk about my background too as a Mormon and a Catholic. And one of the things that Mormons do is that you have family home evening on Monday evenings, and we do that. So we have family home evening, and we discuss different topics.
Oh, that sounds really beautiful to do that, to have something really consistent and be able to have those kind of conversations. Um,
Mhm.
I I just so resonate with that, and the whole. I like to introduce different religions to my daughter as well. It's not we don't have family in the area, so it's really on us to do some of that, and we haven't done as much as we'd like. But we've talked a lot more about. She goes to a Catholic school. We're not Catholic, and so we talk about some of those things and the without calling it dogma, how we don't have any expectation that you become Catholic by attending this school. It's just a really good school. But here are some of the perspectives mom has. Without going too far. I don't want her to be a complete rebel in the school, but I want her to be able to think independently.
Yeah.
And I teach her a lot of energetic techniques. Right now she's not really that
Oh,
interested
that's
in it.
so awesome.
But she today reminded me to do deep breathing because I had a little too much caffeine, as you saw earlier, and I'm just like, ah! And she's like, Mom,
That's so
breathe.
sweet.
I know, and I'm like, hey, you're giving me advice now. You have to follow it because she's like, yeah, I don't really do that myself. I'm like, but now you can.
Yeah.
But I love
Yeah,
introducing those.
a lot of like the coping mechanisms that we have within our family, because two of our kiddos have ASD, um, come from like meditation and deep breathing, or what is it, the NLP, where yeah,
Neuro-linguistic programming, like the
yeah,
use of words and things. How
yeah.
what is ASD?
Oh, autism spectrum.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
All right.
So we have two kiddos on the autism spectrum.
Well, and mindfulness and meditation and um, really even things like yoga and other like qigong
Yes.
and stuff like that are really
Yeah.
I've there are studies, right, that show
Yes.
the benefits
Yeah,
of that.
exactly.
Yeah, that's I mean, and that's I love asking about the parenting perspective because I can see so many benefits of light work, and
Hmm.
even like Reiki energy and things that even the
And
kids don't necessarily.
manifestation too.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, do you have some good?
My
Go ahead.
what?
I was just going to ask if you have some manifestation stories. I love those.
Yeah, my two eldest, so our sons, they can manifest things like crazy. It is so cool. Like they'll be like, "Hey, can I have this or whatever?" And oh, like for example, okay, here's a great example. My eldest son, he's like, "I would love to have a German Shepherd puppy," and we're like, we kind of have like a full house. That's probably not a good idea. We already have a dog and we have three cats, so that's probably not going to happen. Well, 3 weeks later, my best friend got a call from the shelter saying that they had a pregnant dog, a mama dog from Texas that's being flown in, and she's about to deliver her puppies, but she is super super stressed out. Can you take her so that she has like a quiet room? And she ended up being a German Shepherd dog, and
Wow.
we ended up adopting one of the puppies.
Now, does your
I'm like, you manifested this.
Oh, good. I was hoping you pointed it out because I think that it's so easy for that to be missed as a manifestation. It's like, oh, yeah, I said that, but, totally not connected. My daughter has had a very, I can't think of any specific examples right now other than ones that may have been somewhat contrived, but like, she wanted a unicorn, a real unicorn. And well, she did get a stuffed animal from somebody who gave it to her as a gift, but it's like,
Well,
but
there
you
you
did get
go.
a unicorn, but and it's like I try to point those out every time I can because I really want her to recognize the power she has. And I think it's very easy when you're a child, to feel like you don't have a lot of power. And I'm
Mhm.
going to have to start doing that
Mhm.
again because now she's a teenager and definitely in this, do I have power or not? You know? Sometimes she feels completely disempowered and other times she feels really empowered, but not
Yep, I
necessarily
know how
around
that goes.
manifesting. Wow. Well, that's really cool. So, you had mentioned things that you like around mediumship and that you're really interested in the Akashic records. You want to talk just briefly? We have about 15 minutes left. You want to talk a little bit about maybe some of the similarities between those two, or you can talk about anything else that you'd like to bring forward.
Um, let's see. The the Akashic records. I think the modality that I use, like the clairvoyance, is the only thing that's similar in mediumship and Akashic records readings. Um, Akashic records readings are really in depth. I use a pendulum. I do intuitively pull information, which is where the clairvoyance comes in. But mediumship seems like a different, like I'm immersed in this entire world and I'm just seeing everything vividly and it's really cool. And I'm like talking to people and talking to like, I don't know how to explain it.
No, but that's really interesting because then what I kind of heard is that Akashic records may be more structured, maybe a bit more left brain. Um, Not that
Yeah.
it's necessarily left brain or right brain, but that mediumship is seems like more of a. It almost seems expansive to me in a different way. Um,
Yeah.
okay, well
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, I feel very immersed in like this whole world, if that makes sense.
well, and it's really cool because you're clairvoyant, so you have these wonderful, beautiful visuals. It sounds like, and that is, a lot of people, I mean, not in the Lightworkers Lab. In the Lightworkers Lab, we talk about a number of different clairs, right? And it's
Hmm.
really segmented into these multiple clairs. I don't know that within the Lightworkers Lab, but when it was Claire's month, which may have been February or something, I think I had found 11 or
Yeah.
14 different clairs posted somewhere that I read out. I don't remember what
Yeah.
all of them
I
are, but
remember that.
yeah,
I
that,
remember that. I learned from your show. I
oh,
learned the
good.
different
Yay.
some of the most random clairs there are.
Well, I think it's really fun to listen or to learn about these different, some people bring up 14, some people say there are 8 or 7 and to me it's again with that what fits, what doesn't. And I loved learning about some that were kind of like that more obscure, let's say, and not really frequently talked about because it is a way to
Yeah.
learn. And it's like, do I have something like that or what do I have one that's not even been discovered yet? I read some fiction,
Yeah.
and there was one where this woman has like a brand new power that nobody understood, and then all of a sudden they started to recognize its strengths and benefits, and it's like I love that
Oh,
stuff.
so cool. Yes, I love that so much.
Well, and so I mean, I could keep talking about the clairs and clairvoyance and things like that. For me, it's polka dotted almost. It's like I get visuals, but they're kind of like flashes. They don't
Hmm.
last all that long. Um, and I also get messages audially, so I can have the voices, but I also get things from music and things that I picked up that are audio, but like for movies and things like that, that just it's like a couple of words, and it's like oh,
Yeah.
at the right time, and it's like okay, that I get, it's like I get clarity from those things and I get messages to pursue and guidance and things like that. And clairsentience and what's the other one? Claire, I just lost it. Claire, not clairsentience, but the claircognizance. Get that. It's like I've experienced all of them, but not any great I'd say clairsentience and claircognizance are probably my strongest ones now that I am really exploring it deeper. And so, from
Heck
a
yes.
mediumship perspective, it's really different for me. Well, it's different for everybody. I think everybody experiences it differently. And I think that it used to be that people just thought this is clairvoyance, and if you don't have clairvoyance, you don't have gifts and psychic gifts. And then when you do have clairvoyance, some people experience it very visually, and other people experience it in a different kind of visual way. I don't know
Hmm.
why I went into
I
that, but
know. I love seeing the different students in the intensive, like seeing all the different skill sets and modalities and it's really magnificent. It's so cool to witness. I love it.
well, yeah, and the acceptance that goes around that. I mean, I think from a student perspective, recognizing that you know whatever works for you is okay. It doesn't have to fit along, within a
Yeah,
box. And, I think that's where a lot of movies and just teachings of the past were kind of like, it's this way or the highway. And it's like, no, no, it's not. We all, I believe,
exactly.
have gifts and they just show up differently. And some of us are more open to them than others.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Ugh, I love this.
Me too. So one, uh, it may be the last question. I don't know. We'll see. But one is like, do you have you'd mentioned you like rituals, and things like and traditions. What are some of the rituals or traditions that you practice as a light worker?
Okay, let's see. Um,
And that could just be
so
energetic practices or whatever works for you.
so I have a daily meditation routine, sometimes twice a day. I mentioned oh, actually we before we got on live, I'm an early bird, so I wake up before everybody else in the house and I do a meditation. I used to go for runs too, but not so much lately. But I do a meditation. Um, even if I don't really get anything, I still have the practice and routine going. And then sometimes I'll do it later in the day too if like I felt like the morning one didn't really go anywhere. If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
And I also do rituals based off of the moon. Uh, there's so when the moon is waxing, you do manifestation rituals, and when the moon is waning, you do clearing rituals. And so especially if there's things in my life that I really want to manifest or get rid of, I definitely do it routinely. Otherwise, I kind of just light a candle or do my sage or whatever.
But that's really helpful. I mean, I love hearing about people's practices and what they do on a consistent basis, but also just the whole, I've heard the manifesting and clearing aspects of the moon, and I've like that. I've heard these two different perspectives that when it's waxing is manifesting, when it's waning, it's clearing, but also when it's a new moon, it's manifesting, when it's a full moon, it's clearing. And so I find that really fascinating, and I think it can be both and.
Yeah.
And um, but so we have like 5 minutes left. Is there anything else you'd like to add about your story or things that you think are important for people to hear?
Um,
I've just been putting you on the spot left and right today, haven't I? I guess in a sense that's the purpose of the show, but
let's see. Um, so one of the okay, so I do practice Lent still
oh,
from Catholicism, and one of the things that I did was this last Lent is I didn't indulge in anything political. I gave up politics,
what a fun thing to give up at this point in time. That's awesome.
and it was it was good. It was difficult, but it was really good.
So you were
Anyways,
really
but
immersed in it before then?
Oh yeah, my dad was an extremely political person, and it kind of rubbed off on me. And anyway, so the takeaway that I got from it was no matter what, no matter if you feel like being trespassed or anything, just come from a place of love. Like if you don't like something, switch it around and find what the loving aspect, the loving solution is, and then talk about that instead of being mad and posting and that kind of thing. Like find the love to it, the solution from love, and then talk about that.
Well, and I
And
love
people are
that.
going to resonate.
Yeah, well, they do resonate, I think. They want, you know what I was going to say earlier when I read the good news stuff is that I was so happy to find all kinds of different posts on good news, like places that are now communicating good news. Whereas previously, it was really when I started looking for good news stories, which was before I started doing this show, which was almost 2 years ago. I could not find. I'd type in good news and it'd be like good news. Today is Saturday. You know, I mean, it wouldn't be like an actual story. It was really
Yeah.
hard to find. And now it's like there's a lot out there because people are just tired of all the bad news. They want,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the good stuff. And I love the idea of
Mm-hmm.
taking something that could be perceived as negative and that many people sometimes will talk about negatively and finding in that the nugget that represents love and really transforming it from, in a sense, the negative into positive because of that. It's not saying
Yeah.
we're ignoring it and hoping it goes away. It's that there is some love in here and let's talk about that. Let's bring that forth.
Yes.
That's
Heck
beautiful.
yes.
Thank you so much, Vanessa.
Heck
It's
yeah.
just been a
Thank you, Megan.
pleasure talking with you, and I knew it would be, and we've talked before personally, so I already knew this was going to be a lot of fun, but I still really appreciate your taking the time to come on and talk. And thanks to all of you who have joined us today, whether live or in the replay. I love you all. I wish you a magical, mystical weekend and beyond, and health
Thank
and
you so
well-being
much.
as well. And thank you so much, Vanessa. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Megan's Mystical Mashup was recorded live in the exclusive Lightworkers Lab Facebook group on April 18th, 2020. Learn more at thelightworkerslab.com. Learn more about Vanessa on Facebook at Vanessa Claire Solutions, for website vanessaclairesolutions.square.site, or on YouTube at Vanessa Claire. Learn more about Megan at mysticalmashup.com, on Facebook at Mystical Mashup, or by searching on YouTube for Megan's Mystical Mashup. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and share if you enjoyed the show.